I warned them 3 times before the fire came, and every time the HOA board laughed like I was some paranoid hillbilly clinging to a half-burned fantasy. My land sat at the edge of their manicured neighborhood, where my old ranch met their cookie-cutter homes. And every summer the wind rolled dry and hot through the grass like a match waiting to be struck. I've lived there for 20 years, long enough to know the sound of danger before it arrived. And that year the brush was higher than I'd ever seen it, thick as rope, dry as bone, stretching from my fence line straight toward their vinyl fences and decorative pine trees. I sent emails, filed reports, even stood in front of the board during one of their smug little meetings that the fire break they'd removed was the only thing keeping the whole neighborhood from going up like a torch. The president smiled at me, adjusted her blazer, and told me vegetation complaints were outside HOA jurisdiction. Then fined me $200 for having a rusted tractor visible from the road. The fire break had been there long before the HOA arrived, cut by ranchers decades ago after a wildfire nearly wiped out the valley. But the HOA called it unsightly land disturbance and had it filled in with ornamental grass and mulch to improve curb appeal. I told them mulch was fuel. They told me I was dramatic. I showed them photos from the county fire marshal warning about ember spread. They told me to stop fear-mongering. I even brought a firefighter friend to speak during public comment, but the board cut him off, citing time limits, and threatened to have him removed if he continued. When I offered to cut the brush myself at my own expense, they sent me a cease and desist letter claiming I was attempting to modify common land without approval. That was the moment I realized they weren't ignorant. By August, the air was so dry, it cracked your lips in minutes. The wind came early that year, hot and fast, snapping branches like twigs. I cleared my own land as best I could, scraped dirt down to mineral soil around my house, soaked the perimeter every evening, and kept my go-bags ready. I called the county again, but enforcement moved slowly, tangled in jurisdiction disputes between private HOA, land, and county responsibility. The fire marshal told me off the record that the neighborhood was a disaster waiting to happen. All it needed was a spark. The spark came on a Tuesday afternoon when the HOA landscapers decided to use a gas-powered trimmer during a red flag warning. I was repairing a fence when I smelled it first sharp, bitter smoke that didn't belong. I looked toward the neighborhood and saw a thin line of gray curling up from behind the decorative stone wall they'd installed where the fire break used to be. I grabbed my phone and called 911 before the smoke even thickened, then jumped in my truck and drove straight to the HOA entrance. Flames were already licking through the ornamental grass, racing faster than a man could run, driven by wind straight toward the houses. I banged on doors, screamed at people to get out, but most of them stood frozen, staring at their lawns, as if the fire would respect property lines. Someone yelled at me to stop trespassing. Another woman accused me of starting the fire. The HOA president appeared, phone in hand, demanding to know why I was causing panic and filming the damage. I pointed at the flames jumping 10 feet into the air and told her this was exactly what I'd warned them about. She told me to leave before she called the police. Within minutes, the fire exploded beyond control. Embers lifted into the wind like burning snow, landing on rooftops, decks, and hedges soaked in decorative oil. Sirens wailed from every direction, but the fire moved faster than the trucks. Houses at the edge of the development ignited one after another, flames crawling, upsiding, and exploding through windows. The sound was unreal roar, like a freight train, mixed with popping gas lines and shattering glass. People screamed. Dogs barked. Cars jammed the narrow HOA roads they'd designed for aesthetics instead of evacuation. I drove back to my land and watched from the ridge as the neighborhood burned. Firefighters focused on containment, using my cleared land as a defensive line. My house stood untouched while the HOA side glowed orange, entire blocks disappearing into smoke. The irony wasn't lost on anyone except the people who had laughed at me. By nightfall, 12 homes were gone, another 17 heavily damaged, and the rest evacuated indefinitely. Miraculously, no one died, but dozens lost everything they owned. In the aftermath, the blame game started immediately. The HOA released a statement calling the fire an unavoidable natural disaster, but investigators didn't agree. The county fire report cited improper vegetation management, removal of historical fire breaks, use of prohibited equipment during red flag conditions, and failure to heed multiple documented warnings. My emails, letters, and meeting transcripts became evidence. The cease and desist letter they'd sent me was entered into the record. The landscaper admitted they'd been instructed to continue work despite the warning because delaying would upset residents. Lawsuits followed like clockwork. Homeowners sued the HOA. Insurance companies denied claims citing negligence. The board members resigned one by one, some quietly selling what was left of their properties at a loss. The HOA president tried to sue me for defamation after I spoke to a local reporter, but the case was thrown out in under 10 minutes. The reporter titled the article, "Man Warned HOA of Fire Risk. They Ignored Him." It went viral. A year later, the neighborhood looked nothing like it used to. Empty lots sat where homes once stood, blackened foundations like scars. The county reclaimed the land along my fence and restored the firebreak wider than it had ever been. They asked me to help design it. The new HOA board made up of survivors who actually listened, voted unanimously to dissolve the association entirely. There were no more fines, no more decorative mulch, no more pretending nature could be controlled with bylaws. Sometimes I walk the ridge at sunset and look over the rebuilt homes. Simpler now, spaced farther apart, with metal roofs and defensible space cleared down to dirt. People wave when they see me. Some thank me. Some can't quite meet my eyes. I don't feel victorious, but I don't feel sorry either. I warned them. I did everything I could. In the end, fire doesn't care about titles, committees, or curb appeal. It listens only to the land, and the land had been screaming long before anyone else heard it.